The early morning sun was still lazy, its light not yet piercing through the thin mist covering the ancient pine canopies on the western edge of Yellowstone National Park. The air was damp, fragrant with tree resin and wet earth, peaceful enough to be mistaken for an entirely ordinary day. Zane, a ranger with 15 years of experience, was sipping lukewarm coffee from an old metal mug. Next to him, the radio on the dashboard suddenly crackled. Unusual movement near Flat Ridge Pass. Might be an injured moose. Or something bigger. Zane frowned slightly. He closed his notebook, set the mug down, and started the engine in the direction of the signal. 10 minutes later, the truck stopped on a narrow paved road, flanked by slopes and shadowy forest. But what Zane saw made his entire body go cold, as if time itself had frozen. Lying in the middle of the road was a young female bear, fur a mix of gray, brown, and gold, struggling weakly. Not because she had been hit by a vehicle, but because her body was being tightly constricted by a creature that did not belong here. A giant Burmese python, over 6 meters long. The snake's body was coiled around the bear's torso, its scales glinting metallic under the sunlight. With each squeeze, the female bear, later to be known as Luna, gasped for breath. Her sobs silent. Her eyes met Zane's, not with wildness or primal fear, but with pain, and a silent plea for help. Zane dropped the coffee onto the asphalt. He rushed to the truck bed, pulled out a long rod, and with his other hand, called for backup over the radio. His voice urgent. A female bear is being attacked by a python. I repeat, a massive python is constricting a native bear. Send a team immediately. But before Zane could do anything more, a sound tore through the forest, a deafening roar, raw and jagged like thunder from the throat of Mother Earth. From across the wooded road burst forth not a rescue vehicle, but a fully grown male bear. Massive as a truck, jet black fur thick and glossy, eyes burning like fire, charging like a cannonball toward the snake. Zane froze. He stood as if turned to stone. But his instincts told him one thing. This bear, Bran, hadn't come to attack humans. He came to save Luna. And so, in a moment no one could have predicted, the wild heart spoke. The giant Burmese python, an alien predator in the forests of North America, didn't have the chance to tighten one more coil before Bran stormed in like a blaze of fire. No warning growl, no prelude roar, just one brutal slam like thunder crashing down, shaking the snake's massive body. The powerful coils crushing Luna were knocked out of alignment. The python writhed, instinctively trying to squeeze tighter in defense. But Bran gave it no chance. Zane stepped back, taking cover behind the truck, eyes locked on the fight unfolding before him. A battle unlike anything he had ever seen in the wild. Bran roared, the sound piercing deep into every nerve in the forest. He lunged, sinking his teeth into the python's neck. His paw, broad as a shovel, slammed down on thick muscle, producing a sickening crack like dry wood being snapped in two. Blood spurted from the python's jaw. Yet it still clung to Luna, now nearly unconscious. At that moment, the ranger team arrived. 4 officers in brown uniforms jumped from their truck, faces pale as ash at the sight of the chaos. Tyler, the team leader, shouted, "Don't shoot the bear. We're not stopping him, we're helping him. Fan out. Distract the snake." A warning shot rang out. Another ranger struck the python's tail with a baton. The creature hissed ferociously, its head turning with a guttural screech. But Bran didn't stop. He bit, slapped, slammed, each strike a clear declaration. You don't get to touch her. And then, in the peak of tension, the python released, slithering off Luna's body and retreating into the underbrush. Blood streaking behind with every movement. Luna collapsed onto the road, gasping for air, her fur soaked in blood, sweat, and dust, tangled and trembling. Bran didn't give chase. He turned back, placing himself between her and everyone, even the humans trying to help. He didn't growl, didn't threaten, but his eyes gave a silent warning. She's mine. I'm here. Zane stepped forward slowly, his voice low and steady, like speaking to a frightened child. We're not here to hurt her. We want to help. Bran didn't move. He simply stood guard, his gaze never leaving Luna. Not even for a single breath. The entire forest seemed to fall silent. The deer, the birds nearby, none dared to make a sound. Because nature understood. Some love needs no words, yet is stronger than every law of the wild. Luna lay motionless, her body covered in dried blood, dust from the road, and deep purple bruises where the coils had crushed her sides. Her chest rose and fell weakly, each breath a struggle, as if fighting death's retreating grip for the right to keep living. Zane and the ranger team formed a loose circle around her, maintaining a safe distance, but not because of Luna, because of Bran. He was still there, a living shield between the wild and humankind. Towering, tense, as if a single misstep would ignite him into a storm of fury. Tyler whispered, "We need to inject her with painkillers. If we don't, she won't survive the trip to the rescue center." Zane nodded, eyes still locked on Bran. "But we had to ask his permission first, the bear's way." No one laughed. Marissa, the eldest ranger, carefully stepped forward. She crouched low, hands open, carrying no weapons, only a vial and syringe. Every step was a silent prayer. Bran didn't growl, but every muscle along his shoulders rippled like ocean swells. When Marissa was just a few meters from Luna, Bran released a low sound. Soft, like wind brushing through mountain canyons. A warning, not a threat. Luna whimpered, and then, Bran stepped back, 2 steps. Just 2, but everyone shivered. Zane whispered, "He's allowing it, but he's still here." Marissa bowed her head, as if thanking a god. She injected the medication into Luna's flank, fast, clean, precise. Luna flinched slightly, then relaxed, for the first time since the attack. Tyler signaled, "Bring the stretcher." Gently, 4 rangers lifted Luna onto a stretcher made of coarse fabric and wooden frames. Bran followed closely, silently, like a loved one refusing to leave the bedside. As the rescue truck backed in and the rear door opened, before they could even lift Luna aboard, Bran stepped in front. Blocking it, Zane approached slowly, voice calm. "You want to go with her?" Bran looked at him. Just a look, but everyone understood. "I'm not letting her go alone." Tyler sighed. "Give them the flatbed truck. Let him ride with her." A few minutes later, Luna was laid on the wide truck bed, layered with straw. Bran climbed up on his hind legs. Unhurried, unafraid, like a husband walking into the operating room with his wife. He lay down, curling around her like a river of fur and muscle. His eyes opened the entire ride, as the vehicle bumped and rattled beneath them. No words, no roars, only the silent love of the wild, more sacred than any vow ever spoken. The Wildlife Rescue Center lay tucked along the eastern edge of the park, a place that had treated everything from eagles with broken wings to injured elk, and even lynxes caught in traps. But never before, 2 full-grown bears, one of which refused to be separated from the other. As the truck rumbled into the courtyard, kicking up a cloud of red dust under the fiery sunset, every veterinarian and staff member stood waiting, stunned by the sight before them. Dr. Evelyn Hart, head veterinarian, stepped up to the front of the truck. Clipboard in hand, eyes wide with disbelief. "Who's the one lying next to her?" Zane answered simply. "Bran. He's the one who saved her. And he hasn't left her side the entire way." Evelyn looked up into the truck bed. Bran was still lying there, eyes locked on Luna. His chest rose and fell, his body smeared with mud, dust, and blood, but his gaze was clear, unwavering, a gaze that said, "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Evelyn sighed. "I don't know if this is a miracle or a challenge." The stretcher was lifted down. Luna was breathing weakly. The painkillers had begun to work, but the trauma still made her twitch with every jolt of pain. The staff moved in to transfer her to the emergency treatment room, and Bran jumped down with her. A wave of tension surged through the air, like an invisible current of electricity running through everyone present. No one knew what to do. Zane stepped gently in front of the doorway. "Bran, let them work, all right?" Bran didn't growl. He didn't attack. He simply stood, a living wall, blocking the entrance. His breath slow but watchful. Luna whimpered softly, and Bran stepped back 2 paces, then lay down right at the threshold. Eyes trained inside. "Don't lock the door," Evelyn whispered. "Let him see, we're not taking her away." Inside, the room burst into light. Doctors gathered around Luna, stitching wounds, checking vitals, rushing X-rays, fractured ribs, severe soft tissue bruising, but no punctured lungs. She had a chance. At the doorway, Bran didn't move, Only his dark eyes shimmered silently, tracking every movement, every tiny sound from her. No growls, no unnecessary steps, only a presence so silent it hurt. When Luna was moved to the recovery room, the lights dimmed, machines beeped softly with her heartbeat. Bran entered, as if he had waited his whole life for this moment. He didn't tear anything. He didn't destroy a thing. He simply lay down beside the bed, resting his head on his front paws, eyes never leaving her. Evelyn stood frozen in the doorway. I've never seen anything like this. This isn't instinct anymore. This is commitment. Zane nodded, his voice low, like wind through forest trees. Bran's not guarding territory. He's guarding a heart. Night fell quickly, like a velvet curtain draping over the rescue center. Outside, the wind whispered through the treetops. And far off, the hoot of an owl echoed like the distant heartbeat of an ancient forest. But inside the dimly lit room where Luna lay, time stood still. She breathed slowly and laboriously, her chest rising and falling beneath layers of white gauze, surrounded by softly beeping machines, monitoring her heart rate, pulse, and temperature. But those machines weren't the only thing keeping her tethered to life. Bran never left. He didn't sleep. He didn't whimper. He lay there, right beside the stretcher, head resting on his front paws. Eyes wide open through the night like an eternal flame that refused to die out. Every time Luna gasped, every time a machine beeped abnormally, Bran would jolt upright, eyes flashing, head snapping toward her. Dr. Evelyn Hart returned at 2 a.m., exhausted with worry but driven by a need to check on her patient. When she entered the room, she froze. Bran was still there, like a living statue. As Evelyn stepped closer, he didn't growl, he didn't retreat, he just looked. His gaze held no anger, only depth, as if asking, "Is she okay?" Evelyn gently touched Luna's paw to test reflexes. In an instant, Bran tensed, but when she whispered, "I'm only here to help," Bran lowered his head, as if he understood. There was no manual that taught how to communicate with a bear. But that night, Evelyn knew. This was no longer about the wild. This was about trust. The next morning, the first sunlight filtered through the frosted window pane, casting a soft glow on the gauze covering Luna's wounds. She stirred, gently, like a leaf trembling on still water. Bran shot up, eyes wide, breath quickening. Luna whimpered softly. She opened her eyes. She saw him. A single moment, just seconds. But it stretched as long as a bitter winter. She exhaled lightly. Her eyes fluttered, and in that eternal silence, Bran released a soft chuff, a sound as gentle as wind on wings. A call. Zane stepped in right then, eyes stinging with tears. He sat quietly against the wall. "She's awake. You see that, Bran? She came back, because you never left." No one said another word. Because there was no need. It was a night the entire rescue center would never forget. The night a gaze kept someone alive. The night a bear stood guard over life. Like a lover, a husband, a silent warrior with no name. 3 days after that first moment of awakening, Luna was able to lift her head on her own. Though her movements were still weak and at times sluggish, her eyes were brighter, her reflexes quicker, and most importantly, they were always fixed on Bran. But while Luna grew stronger with each passing day, Bran began to weaken. He refused to eat. He wouldn't leave the treatment room, not even to drink water unless it was brought close to where Luna lay. Each time a nurse or doctor approached her, Bran remained calm, but the fatigue in his eyes became increasingly apparent, like a stone wall being slowly worn down by time. Zane sat by the glass door, witnessing it all, as someone who understood the forest. He knew bears weren't like humans. They didn't live on hope. They lived on instinct. But Bran, from the moment he had rescued Luna from the giant python, was no longer a bear driven by instinct. Bran was living, for a reason. Dr. Evelyn Hart called an internal meeting on Wednesday morning. In a small meeting room, the yellowish overhead light and the soft wind seeping through the cracks created a tense atmosphere. "We have a problem," she said bluntly. "Luna is recovering, but Bran is deteriorating. If this continues, he won't live to see her fully healed." A young nurse quietly added, "But how do we separate them? Every time we bring him food, he just sniffs it and turns to look at Luna." Zane finally spoke after a long pause. "It's not that he's not hungry. It's that in his mind, Eating means letting his guard down. It means risk. It means not protecting her. The room fell silent. Evelyn looked at Zane, then slowly said, "We need to move Luna to the outdoor recovery zone. She's strong enough now. And if we bring Bran with her, maybe, just maybe, his survival instinct will return." But then Evelyn stopped. Her voice softened. "If we separate them, we might lose both." Her words dropped into the room like a boulder into a still lake. No one replied, because deep down, they all knew, the love between Bran and Luna had gone beyond scientific understanding. But that same love, could it end up killing them? Outside, a light rain began to fall. Bran lifted his head, gazing through the glass door, where Luna now lay dozing after her final checkup. In his eyes, there was a dimming fire. Not from hunger or pain, but from fear. Fear of loss. And within that quiet shadow, a decision was forming. A relocation. A life or death gamble. A fragile trust. Dawn descended upon the Wildlife Rescue Center like a thin, misty blanket. Everything was quiet, except for the careful footsteps of the medical team and the meticulous preparations by Zane and the conservation staff. Today, Luna would be moved to the outdoor recovery area, a forest enclosure designed to mimic the wild, full of grass, pine trees, wild raspberry bushes, and even a cold stream flowing down from the mountain. Bran already knew. The moment the first hands touched Luna's stretcher, Bran sprang to his feet. He didn't growl, he didn't attack, but his gaze swept over each person like a sharp blade. He followed the stretcher, each step heavy yet resolute. Every time Luna let out a faint whimper, Bran would chuff softly, a soundless lullaby. Zane stood near the gate to the recovery zone, eyes fixed on Bran. If he doesn't follow, she won't get far. If he does, we have a chance. When the gate opened, forest wind rushed in, like an ancient breath. The rescue team gently laid Luna down on a patch of soft grass beneath an old pine tree. Bran looked at her, then he stepped inside. He didn't glance at anyone. He didn't sniff the ground. He didn't survey the environment. He just went to Luna and lay down. No one stopped him. No one dared. Evelyn held her breath, watching from afar. Zane placed a hand on her shoulder and whispered, "He's made his choice. Not the forest. Not instinct. Her." An hour, then two passed. Luna slept deeply to the sound of birdsong. Bran did not. He lifted his head at every noise. He leaned forward to watch every swallow swooping low. And then, for the first time in days, he ate. An NGO had sent frozen salmon from the Snake River. When a staff member placed it near the stream, Bran sniffed, hesitated, then bit. The entire center exploded in silence. He ate. He lived. Because Luna was still breathing. Zane wrote in the logbook, "This is no longer biological recovery. This is resurrection by love." As the sun set, golden orange bathed Bran's thick fur. He looked up at the sky, then bent down, pressing his forehead gently against Luna's. An act only mother bears do to their cubs. Or a male bear to his mate. 2 days had passed since Luna was moved to the recovery enclosure. The wound on her chest had dried. The dark bruises along her ribs were fading beneath new fur. She could now lift her head and take a few slow steps toward the stream, sipping the cold mountain water as if drinking life itself. But Bran was different. Though Luna was healing, Bran was beginning to wither. He hadn't eaten again. He didn't sleep. He didn't leave her side, not for a single step. Whether in rain or wind, whether crows cawed or thunder rumbled, Bran stood guard like a living monument, eyes unblinking. Zane watched from afar, heart heavy. He saw clearly. Bran was slowly destroying himself, out of fear of losing Luna. Evelyn called an emergency meeting. "If this continues," she said, "he'll die before Luna is ready to return to the wild. She needs him, but if he collapses, she'll fade again too." A painful decision was made. Bran and Luna must be separated, temporarily. The next morning, before the sun could rise, the medical team arrived with a stretcher. Luna lay fast asleep from a mild sedative, her breathing steady. Bran stood there. He didn't growl, but his eyes darkened into the wild brown of the untamed. As the team began moving Luna toward a separate holding area for close monitoring, Bran roared, for the first time since arriving at the center. It was not an angry roar. It was a roar of pain, like the sound of loyalty cracking. Zane entered the area. both hands raised. Bran, listen to me. She needs time to fully recover. And so do you. Bran stepped forward. 1 step. 2. Then bowed his head. And turned away. Not out of surrender, but out of trust. Luna was moved to a separate care zone where she could walk and stretch more freely. But all afternoon, Bran sat at the gate, eyes fixed in place. He didn't call. He just stood watch. That night, a rare early summer storm swept through the reserve. Power outage. Alarms blaring intermittently. In Luna's enclosure, a large pine branch cracked and crashed against the fence. The noise startled her. She staggered, confused. From across the sanctuary, Bran roared, this time in anger, this time to protect. Zane ran out. He found Bran had broken through the secondary fence, not with violence, but with sheer will. Bran didn't rush to Luna. He stood a few meters away, but his eyes locked with hers. And in that moment, she didn't back away. She stepped toward him. 2 wild beings, once more, found each other in the storm. News of Bran and Luna, 2 wild bears whose bond defied instinct, spread like wildfire. Major news outlets reported, a wordless love in the wild. Male bear refuses to leave injured mate. Loyalty in the animal kingdom leaves humanity in awe. Their story became a symbol. But for Zane and the conservation team, the fame came with pressure. Phone calls flooded in, sponsors proposing to turn them into a featured couple for environmental education campaigns. Zoos offering to adopt them both. Animal behaviorists requesting to study this emotional phenomenon among wild bears. Zane rejected all of it. He understood what others didn't. Bran and Luna didn't need admiration. They needed freedom. But the decision wasn't simple. If released too soon, Luna might relapse. If kept too long, both might lose their survival instincts. An internal meeting was held. Dr. Evelyn Hart stared thoughtfully at the monitor, where Bran was gently licking the scar on Luna's shoulder. She's recovered, but he hasn't. Not physically, emotionally. I've never said this about a bear before, but if we release them separately, I fear Bran will give up. Zane nodded. We're not releasing bears. We're releasing a family. And so, the plan was set. A special rewilding zone was prepared. No steel fences. Just deep forest, where the wind blew free and the sound of distant streams echoed. That day, Zane led the caravan. Luna rode in a crate on the truck bed. Bran walked behind the vehicle. No leash. No tranquilizers. Only trust. When the gate opened, Luna stepped out slowly, sniffing the wind. Bran waited behind her. She paused and turned back. He gently touched his nose to her neck. And together, they walked into the forest. Neither of them looked back. The northern wilderness of Yellowstone had never been as quiet as it was that day. The grass bowed beneath heavy paws. The pine trees whispered softly, as if welcoming them home. Bran and Luna, no longer just 2 injured bears under watchful eyes, were now 2 free souls in their world. Zane and the rescue team stood at the forest's edge, silent. Only the soft clicks of a camera captured the final moment. Luna lifting her right paw, still slightly shaky, but without hesitation. Bran followed behind, not pushing, not leading, just walking beside her. 3 days later, the first footage from an infrared trail camera came through. Luna was seen by a small stream, head bowed, licking the fur around her scar. A normal behavior for a bear in recovery. Bran stood next to her, quietly gazing into the distance, as if checking the world before she stepped into it. He was no longer her savior. He had become her guardian of peace. A week later, they were spotted near Fog Valley, a place once known for illegal animal traps. Bran growled upon spotting old blood stains on a fallen log. Luna approached, gently touched her nose to his shoulder. That was all. Bran calmed, turned away, and led her in the opposite direction. Zane, watching their journey through GPS collars, simply smiled. He's no longer a warrior. He's learned how to be a guide. At night, the moonlight spread silver across the forest floor. 2 bear shapes curled together beneath a natural rock shelter. Silent, but anyone watching would understand. Bran was still standing guard over Luna's sleep. And Luna was still the reason Bran hadn't fallen apart. But deep in the forest, peace wasn't all that remained. New signals began to emerge from the borders. Strange claw marks on tree bark, metallic sounds in the night. Zane pressed his lips together, thinking quietly, something's coming back, and this time, they'll have to face it together. Early that morning, a fierce roar echoed from the western slope of the reserve. Zane, monitoring the surveillance cameras, froze instantly. He rewound the footage. Not a bear, not a wolf. The sound of metal clashing, steel tightening, and a choked howl. He leapt into his truck, radioing in. Code red, Northern Restricted Zone, possible trap, possible victim. When Zane arrived, Luna was circling an area littered with fallen leaves. She didn't run, but she didn't approach either. Her eyes fixed on the pine ridge below a rocky outcrop. Zane followed her gaze, and found Bran. The great bear lay still, one front leg caught in a crude wire snare. Blood dripped slowly onto the leaves. There was no roar, no struggle, only his eyes, deep, smoldering, and awake. Zane knelt down, his heartbeat pounding. Bran, it's you again. Always you. Luna crept closer, growling softly, not to threaten, but to warn. Zane raised his hand gently. I know, I won't hurt him. Trust me, like before. He cut the snare, slow and steady, and Bran, despite the searing pain turning his limb pale and swollen, did not strike. He simply closed his eyes, as if once again surrendering himself to this man. Zane radioed back to the center. Bran's injured. This time it's worse, but there's still fire in his eyes. I think he still wants to live. Back at the rescue station, everything moved with urgent silence. Bran was no longer a wild bear. He had become a living symbol of the wild's miracle. The trap had cut deep into the tendons, damaging the joint. Full recovery was uncertain, but one thing never changed. Luna never left the steel fence. Every day, she stood there, calling to him with soft sounds. Zane stood beside Dr. Evelyn as the surgery concluded. Will he ever walk beside her again? Evelyn sighed. Maybe not fast, but if his will remains, Bran will walk, even if every step means dragging himself through pain. Zane gripped the window frame tightly. Then we won't give up. Not while Luna still waits. On the other side of that fence. 6 weeks later, the early autumn sunlight bathed the forest behind the rescue center in a golden hue. Fallen leaves scattered across the winding paths, and the air carried the cool promise of a season in transition. Bran could walk again, slowly, limping still, but every step was a victory. His wound had healed, but the scar, like a silent witness, remained. In the small courtyard where rangers monitored recovering animals, Luna stood still under the shade of the pines. Her eyes never left the wooden door at the back, the one Bran usually emerged from each morning in his mobile enclosure to breathe the wild air. This morning, the door was left open. Zane and Evelyn stood nearby, silent. Bran appeared. There was no roar, no rush, just a gaze, long and knowing, between two beings who had once survived death together. Bran walked forward, calm and steady. Luna waited. When only a few feet remained between them, she bowed her head, and he touched her shoulder, lightly. With his rough, scarred nose. A single touch. No sound. No ceremony. In the wild, love doesn't declare itself. It stays, when the other is at their weakest. Zane unlatched the final gate, the one leading back into the forest where they both once belonged. No one called. No one urged. Bran turned back, once, as if to say, thank you, but I do not belong to a world behind fences. Luna walked first. Bran followed, still slow, but no longer falling. As their silhouettes dissolved into the trees, Evelyn whispered beside Zane, they return, not as two bears, but as two souls, who loved, who held on, and who chose each other. In nature's vast, sacred silence. 1 month later, a drone captured this image. A female bear sleeping in a quiet valley. Beside her, a large male bear, his front paw curled slightly. The scar still visible. Bran and Luna, still together. No enclosures, no witnesses, only the trees, the wind, and each other. If you've ever been moved by the love between humans and animals, then take a moment to consider the love between wild creatures, where there are no words, only loyalty, and the silent courage to stay. Bran didn't save Luna out of instinct. He stayed, because something in him recognized her soul. And Luna waited, not out of fear, but because she believed, when love is real, the one you love will return. even if it's on bleeding legs. Or with nothing more than a quiet touch beneath the forest canopy. Like, share, and subscribe if you believe. True love doesn't need words.